The following is brought to you by Bleacher Report. If you guys want to check out my live post-game reaction show, make sure to have the Bleacher Report app downloaded and ready to fire up right after the game. You'll find me in the Chargers section. Bolt up.
Go to Bolt fam. It's the director. Chargers fans, tough one this week. First off, I'm going to start this video off by saying congratulations to the Steelers. We knew the Steelers were going to be a tough opponent. I don't think anybody took their talent for granted. We knew it was going to be a tough one this week. However, my heart is busted wide open, man. I got to tell you, the way this game went down disappoints me tremendously. And I don't think anyone's going to dispute the Chargers folded, melted down, disintegrated as the roster continued to show more and more injuries as the game went on. It was a disaster health-wise. And it's the very last thing that you want to see as a Chargers fan, as a football fan. Heck, we hate seeing players on the opposite side go down. It's just not something you like to see as a fan of the sport, right? Well, this game, to my shock, I mean, I would say to nobody's shock, started off spectacular in my opinion. The way the team or the matchup went down, at least in the first half, right, going into the second half, exactly as a lot of us expected. Rough, tough, hard-nosed, ground and pound, old style, old school style of football. It was fun. The defenses were firing. The pass rush was on for both teams. The run game was trying to get off the ground for both teams. It was exactly as advertised, man. I was having a good time with it. It was fun. It was cool. And the Chargers, step for step with the Steelers. You could say the same thing about Pittsburgh the entire time, too. Both these teams mirroring each other so well in terms of identity and style and offense, defense, very tough. Pass rush, very good. Run game, very good. Both teams had a lot of aspects to appreciate that were very similar to each other. And more or less, the first half of this game really was a good display of that. It was cool. I was very, very entertained. And then I think the first domino went down. I'd say even the first domino went down even before kickoff of this game. The Chargers trying to decide whether or not Justin Herbert would be starting this game. That is going to be a point of emphasis, a talking point that is going to be brought up a lot this week by myself. I'm sure other Chargers outlets and talk shows and everything's going to be talking about, should have Justin Herbert been in this game? It's going to be a talking point. That's sure something going to be a determining factor of this game as well. Justin Herbert's presence in the first half, kind of keeping things going. The passing game helping us get up early with Quentin Johnson, who's been having a nice bounce-back season. His play in this game was a big boost for this team, a big advantage. Chargers definitely had a quarterback advantage coming into this one. But as the game progressed, especially I would say in the second half, the first domino to fall in this meltdown disaster of health for the Chargers was Joey Bosa. And at that point, you start thinking about, okay, the Chargers, they're looking good in terms of depth. They've built for this. The team is very deep at the position of edge. I was disappointed as a really big Joey Bosa fan. Seeing him go to the sideline, certainly something that Chargers fans hate to see, and we've seen a lot of it the last couple of seasons. But we had Tuli Tuipulotu out there who was going out and making big plays, right? That's certainly something that we knew he was capable of. We knew Next Man Up was a really good player, so I wasn't too concerned. Then we start seeing other really key players of this team not on the field. Rashawn Slater, my chat was going crazy. Where's Rashawn? Where's Rashawn? This is a week we really needed Rashawn Slater. The Pittsburgh Steelers pass rush, among the best in the entire league, put the Chargers in a really bad position. Rashawn Slater, again, none of this confirmed. I haven't had time to go and look up exactly what was going on, but from what we hear, there was some sort of pectoral injury that was keeping him questionable to return in the game. And that put the Chargers in a really bad situation in terms of pass protection. Okay, not too long after that is where we see the biggest disaster, the nuclear bomb dropped on this team in Justin Herbert getting rolled on by Cam Hayward and re-aggravating that ankle injury. And at that point, you see Justin Herbert hobbling around the sidelines. He's going into the blue tent. It's not feeling good out here. But like Joey Bosa, I'm like, hey, next man up, man. We signed Taylor Heineke for a reason. We're not out of this yet. Heineke, a more than capable quarterback. This team, once again, like I mentioned, was built to succeed even in these situations. Heineke, he's got a run game. He's got a tough defense, right? Heineke can succeed in this situation. So I wasn't quite panicking quite yet. But then it started to settle in, right? The pass protection wasn't quite there without Rashawn Slater. Not too long after that, Cam Hayward rolls on the knee of Joe Alt, and he goes down. And at this point, you're looking around. You're looking at the battlefield around you, the fallen soldiers, and how many are on the ground and who's left standing. It's not looking good for the Chargers. Let me reiterate this. The Chargers lost Justin Herbert, franchise quarterback. They lost Rashawn Slater, franchise left tackle. They lost Joey Bosa, franchise pass rusher. They lost Joe Alt, franchise right tackle. The amounts of incredible injuries that stacked up this week was not only unfortunate, but super hard to believe, right? It's unbelievable how many injuries the Chargers sustained this week. And it ultimately, I think, completely threw off the game for him in the second half, which sucks. As a Chargers fan, especially with what we saw in the first half, I was very ready for this game, very ready to see, the unstoppable object meeting the unmovable force or whatever. And it was really, shaping up that way into that point. But just too many injuries, man. The meltdown resulted in what ultimately led to a very disappointing experience for at least this Chargers fan. Now, I'm not going to say the Chargers were destined to win this game, even with all players healthy. I'm definitely not going to say that. There was a lot of issues this week in terms of penalties that we have to talk about as well. Derwin James had his share of pretty weird and abnormal penalties that, let's be honest, were shoot yourself in the foot situations a lot that really helped the Steelers sustain drives in situations you just could not see that. Sure, there was some penalties out there where I'm like, what are you doing, ref? The roughing the passer on Khalil Mack I thought was bogus. But there were their share of penalties as well. They're absolutely justified. A hold on Asante Samuel that you can't see. Tons of things in terms of preventable penalties that the Chargers did shoot themselves in the foot with that could have, even if the Chargers were healthy, resulted in a Pittsburgh win. Because I don't think anybody was disillusioned enough to think that Pittsburgh was going to be a walk in the park. At least I wasn't. I was pushing very heavily in my streams and in my videos that the Steelers are a playoff caliber team. They have been for the longest time. And it's going to be a very tough fought win if the Chargers are able to figure it out. And this week, it just wasn't in the cards. This opens up, though, guys, a conversation that we need to have about what the Chargers are going to be doing from here on out. Okay, Steelers, congratulations. Tough win by them. They did really good. And honestly, up until a lot of different points, I was extremely optimistic about the Chargers' chances going up until next week. We saw Joe Alt in the first half completely shut down T.J. Watt. He did end up letting up, I think, one sack. And T.J. ended up having the last laugh, of course, in the end with Joe Alt hurt. But it makes me really cautious as to what's going to happen next week, and very grateful for what I was not grateful for in the past in that Week 5 bye. That Week 5 bye may end up being the saving grace of this season. Because, again, as much as I'm disappointed in this game and as much as it is a punch to the gut with all of the key players that we lost in this one, it is still very early. It's Week 3 of the NFL season. Definitely no reason to panic quite yet. But it really makes me think about what's going to happen now. We're going to play the Kansas City Chiefs next week, man. Reigning Super Bowl champions. And we may be going into that game without Justin Herbert, without Joey Bosa, without Joe Alt, without Rashawn Slater. without a lot of key elements of this team, it really makes me wonder what the plan's going to be. What do you guys think, man? Very open-ended question here. What do you think the plan should be next week versus Kansas City? No one ever wants to say it's a throwaway game. I don't think it really is. I don't think it ever will be a throwaway game. But you're going to have to really decide for yourself how you're going to handle the situation in terms of health. Because if you run out there with a hobbled Joe Alt, a hobbled Rashawn Slater, a hobbled Justin Herbert, and you risk, furthering those injuries past the bye week, I don't know if that's the right call. After the Kansas City Chiefs, you got that very valuable Week 5 bye. Maybe even with 2 weeks to recover, maybe we will see a majority of those guys return. In which the Chargers' schedule does get a lot better after that. As a matter of fact, I'll go pull that up here real quick. I wasn't quite planning on talking about this, but I think it is pretty important. Okay. Chargers' schedule. After the Week 5 bye, we play the Broncos, we play the Cardinals, the Saints, the Browns, the Titans, the Bengals. So there's a good, I would say, 3 out of 5 of those games feel very, very winnable. All of them feel like they have a shot, right? But the schedule is still pretty soft. So even if the Chargers go 2-2, out of the bye, if we're more healthy by the end of it, I think that's kind of the move for me. Because this has certainly been the biggest wrench in the machine for the Chargers so far this season. The health. And we have a really good strength and conditioning coach, maybe one of the best in the entire world. But things happen. Teams get injured. It's crazy to think the amounts of key injuries that happened this week, but we got time still to sort it out. I don't know. I'm still optimistic about our odds to make the postseason. I think the Chargers are still a double-digit win team, in my opinion. Absolutely. But this week was just one of those feelings I haven't felt in a while as a Chargers fan, of a stroke of fate out of our control, and one that really could determine the next couple of weeks of the year. Injuries suck, no matter which way you slice it. And these were some of the biggest players, not just in football, not just on the Chargers, but in football, that ended up getting injured this week in the middle of this game for the Chargers. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think we honestly have a really good shot at winning this game if everybody's healthy. I think we have a really good shot at winning this game if either or Justin Herbert or the offensive line finds a way to make it to the end of this game. But losing everybody all at once, that's tough. That's a tough break. I honestly don't think it reflects on what would be the success of the rest of the season at all. I really do see it as kind of like a blip on the radar, a fluke. Would you be in terms of like luck in this one? I don't think it's going to be really hard to determine what this team really is and what the odds of them are for the rest of the season based on this game because of all the injuries. Because I would say you take a look at the first half, that is what the Chargers are, and that's what this game could have been the entire 60 minutes, right? The second half, though, with all the injuries, I don't know what to tell you. It's very uncharted waters, uncharted territory. There's really just not enough to tell us the reality of what this team is in that situation. The only realities I can tell you is that the depth on offensive line isn't where I want it to be. I don't think it was at the top of the offseason, nor was it at the end of the offseason. All I can tell you is the backup quarterback situation does look a lot better. We didn't get a huge sample size of it, but I am more happy with Taylor Heineke. Just the amount of the injuries, though. I just don't know if we were quite prepared to handle that sort of situation. So, yeah, the team is facing a pretty complex situation right now. The team is facing a pretty big decision next week. I'm not quite sure what the right decision is quite yet. Just kind of flying, by the seat of my pants and guessing at this point is that the Chargers should probably try and avoid playing any of the guys that had any sort of tweaks this game, any sort of injury this game. Let Taylor Heineke go out there and try and do his thing behind a line that, let's be honest, is not going to be at 100%. You may not even have either one of your tackles next week. Alt and Slater might be out next week, which is going to stem some pretty big questions as to who's starting there. It'll probably be Trey Pipkins and Jamari Sawyer, if I'm being quite honest with you guys. It's going to be tested. I certainly wouldn't roll out with Joey Bosa. I certainly wouldn't roll out with Justin Herbert, especially, right? All these guys that got hurt, I would say do your best versus the Chiefs. See if you can still find a way to put yourself in a situation with the run game to succeed. But that week 5 bye is going to be a very important week, a very, very important timestamp in the season for the Chargers. This could be like the portal to success or the portal to failure at this point. We're going to have a lot of questions that need to be answered after this week. And honestly, guys, there's streams that I do for Bleacher Report. I often get scheduled to do streams like the day after and stuff too. I'm very grateful that I don't have the day after stream. So I don't have a lot of answers for you guys right now. There's going to be a lot of waiting and seeing and understanding of the injuries before we can get any sort of idea of what to expect in the future. We're going to have to sit and wait for those injury reports. We're going to have to sit and wait to see what the severity is of some of these injuries before we can have any inkling of an idea of how this team's going to bounce back in the future. How bad is that ankle injury for Justin Herbert? We don't know. How bad is the, again, assumed pectoral injury for Rashawn Slater? We don't know. How bad is the, again, assumed knee injury for Joe Alt? We don't know. Joey Bosa with the hip? We don't know. We don't know anything. And until we start getting more answers of the timetable and the severity of these injuries, I cannot tell you what the future looks like quite yet. All I can tell you is that the Chiefs, it's going to be the toughest game the Chargers have played in a long time if they don't have a majority of those guys, and I don't think I would put any of them in there. The bye week, I'm very grateful for the positioning of it all of a sudden, and then we got the Broncos in week 6 on October 13th. To see where we're at coming out the other end from all these injuries. Very tough to evaluate. Very tough game to evaluate. All the injuries really just put a lot of question marks on where this team is. There's really no answers. We're kind of back to the mystery of what are the Chargers this season, given all the injuries and all the situations that they have to overcome in the next couple of weeks. I don't know. I really don't know. Well, guys, I don't know how much more I have for you guys. The Chargers looked great. They looked exactly like we expected them to look like at the top of the game. The first quarter looked awesome. All the injuries started piling up, and then we're in uncharted territories, uncharted waters. I don't know what to tell you. It sucks. It's unfortunate. But all I'm going to say to exit the show is that we're not done. It's still early. The team has time to figure this out. We have time to see, what the severity is of all these injuries and how the Chargers can handle it. And we still have one of the softest schedules in the NFL to look forward to after we come out the other end of the bye week. So we got a lot more to discuss as the weeks go on. But again, pay attention to Twitter, pay attention to my social media platforms and Chargers social media to see, really what the situation is before we start panicking. I don't think there's time to panic. This is not a time to panic quite yet. This was, again, just a series of unfortunate events for the Chargers in terms of health. It really derailed their chances at winning this game in the end. And it in no way reflects on who they are as a team and their odds of being successful in the future. This was a unfortunate meltdown disaster for the team, and they have a chance to bounce back. We just got to see how they're going to do it, how quickly we can expect all of this to change, and how quickly we can expect all these guys to come back from injury and give us a shot at it later on. So chat says, honestly, I'd be happy if Herbert and the others just have limited play. Maybe. I would avoid it completely. One thing I will say that I forgot to mention that I didn't like, other than the penalties the Chargers shot themselves in the foot with. The last thing I will mention that I think the Chargers need to reevaluate a little bit, the play calling on offense in the second half, I did not like that at all. The play that actually ended up resulting in the Justin Herbert injury, I did not like that at all. It looked like a goal line play. Everybody up on the line except for the one wide receiver out wide. It ended up being a play action, which put Justin Herbert in a really bad situation to try to get that ball away with so many Steelers, rushing all at once. And that ended up being the play that got him hurt. Didn't like that. Was really hoping to see the run game established a little bit more aggressively. That didn't happen. And I think it cost the Chargers in this one. Got to get back to the roots of the run game. Hopefully add a little bit of flavor for next week to J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, because they're likely going to be the only reason you have any shot at winning that game on offense. Taylor Heineke, I think, is going to have an okay situation in front of him. Or I should say the Chargers are in an okay situation because of Taylor Heineke, a backup quarterback. But it's tough. Tough break this week, guys. Sorry, Chargers fans. I know this one's probably pretty disappointing. I don't have much for you this week. Just a very, again, unfortunate circumstance with all the injuries, and all you can do is hope and pray that next week everyone's a little bit healthier. Out of the bye week, everybody's ready to go, and that we can get back on track to this Harbaugh debut era in week 6, because right now it does not look good. It does not look good. And until we get more answers, we don't know how it's going to look in terms of recovery and coming back from it after the bye week. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been the Director. Be mad today, bolt up tomorrow, and above all else, pray that all these injuries aren't as bad as they looked like they were on the surface. We'll catch you guys next time. Hit me up with a follow here on Bleacher Report. We'll catch you next time. As always, bolt up and stay frosty.